Auto Utilities in version 8. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Retail Pro. Okay. Now, Auto Utilities in 8, most of them start off with the auto min-max or with a min-max being set up. So even if you don't use the auto min-max, there is a way to manually set up a min and max. So don't stress it if the auto min-max seems a little confusing. You're not alone in that. I will try to make it as clear as I can. You'll notice I have auto min-max underneath merchandise. I also believe I have it under transfers, and I have it under purchasing. So you should be able to find it any number of places. I'm going to focus on the one underneath merchandise. So I'm going to click on Auto Min Max. Now, just to clarify, setting up a min and max is you setting up, based on your sales, setting up a minimum level or the very least that you want to keep in stock versus the very most that you want to keep in stock, or your max. Now, in the Auto Min Max tool, there are 3 steps to complete the process. The first step is the sales, and you'll notice over here we have a sales button, formula, and calculate button. That's the order that you want to do them in. So the first thing we're going to do is click on sales. Okay. Now, let me just get this out of the way. There we go. Just kind of move that out of the way. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to put in the time frame that you want the computer to look at to determine what your minimum and maximum should be. So that could be the last quarter. It could be, if you're a seasonally driven store, it could be last year for your season. It could be last month. It could be last year to date. I'm going to set it up. I want to look at the last 12 months. And mind you, this is a demo copy. This is my copy of Retail Pro. And so there's not a lot of sales in here. I think I'm going to do it like that. Not a lot of sales in here because obviously I'm not ringing up things on a regular basis. So I am going to look at last March through this February. Now you can narrow it down if you only want to see the sales for a certain department, certain vendor, that type of thing. Generally speaking though, we usually leave the filter empty. Now you do need to also choose which store you want to do it for. Okay? You can also do it company-wide if you choose. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Start button and save my changes. Okay, and I'm going to let it go through and read through whatever sales I might have. Now, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to raise your hand. I will try to pay attention to when I see a hand raised, and I'll try to answer your question right then and there. Okay, now that it has gone through and it's calculated the sales, now we're going to get into the second step of the process, and that's the formulas. Now, once you build your various formulas, you won't have to touch this button each and every time unless you choose to make a new formula. Now, I obviously don't have any formulas in here, so I'm going to go ahead and click on New. I'm going to give it a name. Most typically, you might want to base this on your vendor or your lead time. I usually base it on my lead time, where I have 30-day, and that's what I'm going to call it. Now, that will make a lot more sense when we get into the formulas. Okay. Now, the top half is where we're going to set up our formula for the minimum. The bottom half is where we're going to set up our formula for the maximum. So on my minimum, I can tell the computer anything that I have sold one of to 99999. This is how I want my minimum set up. Now, most typically, I like to set this up. Come on. Let me in there. Come on. It won't let me in there to edit it. Let me try this again. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to tell the computer anything I sold 1 to 10 of. I want whatever is greater. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time this morning. I want whatever is greater, a 30-day supply. Oh, come on. I apologize for this. I hate when I have technical difficulties during one of these. Bear with me a moment. I'm sorry. I apologize. Well, I'm going to try, yes. Let's see if I reopen the AutoMin Max. Maybe that'll do the trick. Go into formulas. That one I'm going to delete. So I want to edit. One. Okay, so I'm selling anything that I sold 1 to 10 of during that time frame that I'm looking at. I want whatever is greater, either a 30-day supply, because that's how long it takes. Days of supply is based on how long it takes from the moment that you order it to when it's going to show up in your door, or your lead time. So I want whatever is greater, the amount that I sold in a 30-day time frame or a quantity of 1. So by setting this up this way, basically what I am going to do is I'm telling the computer I want everything to at least have a minimum of 1. But if I sold more in a 30-day time frame, I want to make that my minimum. So it's the greater of these two fields right here. Either however many I sold, an average of what I've sold in a 30-day time frame, or a quantity of 1, whichever one of those two numbers is greater. Now, you can set up an increase if you choose to. So if you want to increase whatever your sales numbers were by 1% or 2%, you can most certainly do that. This last button here is for annualizing the sales. So even if you're looking at a season, a 3-month, 4-month season, by checking this box, it is going to look at overall, it's going to assume that that's what you sell all year long. Now, anything that I've sold 11 to 99999, I want to make this the greater of either my 30-day supply or a minimum quantity of 3. Okay, and that's just a number that I determine I want to be my minimum. So whatever one of these two numbers is greater is going to become my minimum based on that sales run that we did. Now, you do not need to create a maximum in order to use this, but if you decide to, generally we're going to kind of make this the same way as the other one. Save. Okay. I'm going to say 1 to 10, but now I want whatever is the lesser of. So I want a 30-day supply. Okay, I want a 30-day supply or a maximum quantity of 10. Okay, so that's my maximum quantity. Down here, I'm going to do greater or lesser of either a 30-day supply or 11. Okay, so it works the same way, only now it's going to look and it's going to say what number is lesser, a quantity of 10 or what I sold in a 30-day time frame. Same with this one down here. Now at this point, I'll go ahead and save this. Okay, now that my formula is done, that may have been part of the problem. Let me go ahead and save that, and then we're going to go ahead and back out of here. Okay, we're back to our auto min-max screen. Now the last step is the calculation. Okay, so I'm going to go into calculation, and I'm going to tell it what formula I want it to apply and calculate my sales information with. Again, you'll notice there's a spot for you to choose your store. I'm going to go ahead and click Start. Now, I do want to caution you, I may not get any viable data because I don't typically sell out of my Retail Pro, so the only time I'm really in there is when I want to test things or that type of thing. So it is applying that formula to the sales numbers that it ran, and it's calculating, looking at how many I've sold of each, and then based on my formulas, what my minimum and maximum should be. Okay? So you'll notice right here in the new min, I have one item that came back with a minimum of 1. Because I sold all these zeros, or this one up here, came back with a minimum of 1. Because I told it any item that I've sold at least 1 of, but no more than 10 of, give me either a minimum of 1 or a minimum to cover a 30-day supply. Well, because I don't sell very much in here, a lot of these items have never even sold 1, so that's why a lot of these are zeros. Okay? Now I'm just going to kind of scroll down and see if we happen to get any other fields in here. Okay, we didn't. So I'm going to go ahead and update my min. Now I could come in here and I could say, I think for this particular style, I'm going to manually put in a quantity. So I'm going to say 1 here. Okay, I'm going to put 1 down here. Okay. Now, once I have the numbers the way I want them, I'm going to come over here to the side and I'm going to tell it to update. You'll notice that it put my minimums and maximums in a new min and a new max. It's not official yet until I tell it to update. Once I update, these numbers will jump over into the regular minimum and the regular maximum. So I'm going to come over here to update. Okay, I'm going to tell it to update all items. Typically, that would be the setting that you'd want. Quantities only is only going to update the items where there actually was a number. I want to do all items. So I'm going to go ahead and click Start. Okay, so you'll see those items where the new min used to have the number in there, it's now in the minimum column. So at this point, if I back out of the auto utility, out of the auto min max, I can go into inventory and I can see that I have some items that have, just need to come up a little bit. There we go. I can see that I have some items that have a minimum. Now that's how you would use the Auto Min Max tool. If you chose to do this manually, that you'll just fill in the numbers yourself, then what you can do is you'll notice down in the lower right-hand corner, it says Edit Single. I'm going to press Control and F2. That's going to put me into continuous edit mode. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in a minimum for the rest of these items, for the rest of this style. Okay, now I'm also going to go ahead and put in a max. And all I'm doing is typing in the quantity, arrowing down. By moving it out of the field, it saves my previous entry when I'm in continuous edit mode. Okay, now the other thing that I'm going to do so I can show you some of the other auto utilities is I'm going to wipe out my quantities. As long as I'm in here editing, might as well edit out my quantities. I'm going to do it for both. Actually, I'm just going to do it for this location. Okay, so that is how you can do you can manually set up a min and max, is to come to your quantities tab down on the bottom. By default, you should have the minimum column and the maximum column. Put yourself in a continuous edit mode, and that will allow you to go through and just, type in the number you want, move on to the next field. Okay? Any questions about that process? I know I've kind of gone through it quick and we had some problems, but there we go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead then and get started and go over the Auto PO. Now, as unuser-friendly as the Auto Min Max can be the first couple of times you use it, fortunately, Auto PO is a little bit more user-friendly. So I'm going to go to Purchasing and Auto PO. It is going to open up a separate window. Okay, so basically you need to go through and set up these 5 tabs up here. Now the nice thing with the Auto PO is that I can set up different variations of how I want the Auto PO to run. So let's say this time around I want to set it up for a store, and I'm going to set it up for the store that I set up the min and max on. Okay, I want it to be a dropship PO. This time around, I want it to put a little ampersand right at the beginning of my PO. So you have the choice when the system generates your PO for you. You can either have the vendor code be at the beginning of it, or you can choose to mark it with some other flag that will show up at the beginning of it. The reason that I choose the symbols is because symbols will come before numbers, which will come before letters. So this way, my auto-generated POs will sit up at the top of my list versus being mixed in alphabetically with all the other vendors. Okay. Next, I'm going to go to the PO Info tab. Now, typically, I type in the associate to be auto. That's another way for me to determine when I'm looking at my list of POs which ones were auto-generated and which ones I've made myself. Once they've been generated, I will go in and change the associate to be my name. That lets me know that I have dealt with it and I've sent it off to the vendor. Now the order date is going to default to whatever date you're currently on. The shipping date can be today's date, or you can mark it with this little box right here and say, or make it 14 days after my order date. If you don't want there to be any time in there, set that to 0 and uncheck that box. Okay. So I'm just going to set this to 14. Now I can choose to use a cancel date or not. I am going to go ahead and put in a cancel date of 60 days after my order date. Okay. So these you can set up however you want. Now the third tab, the analysis tab, is probably one of the most important tabs because this is your way of telling the computer what you want it to take into consideration when it's determining if you need to order an item or not. Okay, so you can have it take into consideration transfer orders. And if I check that, you'll see you have the option of incoming, or outgoing. Okay, you can have it take into consideration sales orders. So maybe I'm going to have it look at my sales orders. I need it to order to get me to my minimum, but I also need enough to cover what I have on sales orders. Since layaways are a product that you already have in stock, I'm typically not going to use that in my analysis. But if I have any of these items on a customer order or a special order, I want the computer to order enough to cover those as well. Now, you do have this here. Do not use min level as the reorder point. I have very, very rarely ever used that because that's kind of the whole point. I'm trying to fill to my minimum. Usually we use the order to fill min-max levels. Now you'll notice that we can fill to a min level, we can fill to a max level, or we can fill to a custom level in between. I tend to like to fill to 50%. That way I'm not constantly ordering one, getting up to minimum, and then I sell it, and then it tells me to order one again. I want to get a little ahead of the game. Okay? Now this setting right down here is going to take into consideration your purchase orders. By leaving it blank, it will look to see if any of the items that are below your minimum are already on a purchase order. No sense telling you to reorder it if you've already reordered it and you're just waiting for it to show up. But what you would use this for down here is if you wanted to exclude certain date ranges of POs. It's not uncommon. Certain industries have what they call pre-season orders, where they order 10 or 11 months of it in advance of when they would typically put that product out, but they get a really, really good deal on it. So let's say that I carry Wrangler jeans, just for an argument's sake. I carry Wrangler's jeans year-round, but my pre-season order I place for my Christmas time. I don't want those Wranglers to go out on the floor. Now, I create my pre-season order, but I'm not going to get those items for 10 or 11 months. So I don't want the computer to consider that that is ordered and on its way because I'm not going to have it in enough time to fill my minimum. That's how you would use this setting down here, is when you wanted to exclude a certain date range. And obviously over here, you would set it to exclude. Okay? Now the next tab that we have is the Elements tab. And this is just everything that you potentially can filter by. I generally move everything above the line. I'd rather have it on my filter and not use it than wonder if I can filter by it. Last, we have the Criteria tab, which is all those things you just put on your filter. Now, you can filter for a certain department, a certain vendor, anything that you sold in the last week. A lot of people like to use the vendor code and filter by it because each vendor needs its own PO. But know that even if you don't filter for the vendor code, depending on your system preferences, the system will make a separate PO for each vendor that shows up on your list of items to order. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to come here to Save As, and I'm just going to put in here training just so we can see what it is. So the reason that I'm doing that is I want to close this tool and go back in. I can make different settings. So when I come into the Auto PO tool, I come over here to Load, and I tell it which settings I want it to run. I want to go with this training one right now. So I'm going to tell it to open these settings. And you'll notice that it brings back all of the settings I've put in there. Okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and click on Run. Once I've got all my settings in there, I want to click on Run. And yes, I'm going to save those changes. Okay, and it brings back everything that needs to be ordered. Okay, now here is my on-hand quantity. Everything is a 0. That we knew was going to happen because I zeroed everything out. My minimum is 1, my maximum is 5, and I'm telling it to fill to halfway between the two. So that's why it's ordering me 3. Now this adjusted on-hand column, this is actually what it's basing how many it's going to order on. It's not basing it on the on-hand. The adjusted on-hand is going to take into consideration those sales orders I told it to and the purchase orders that I might have for these items. If it was on, so I might see that my on-hand is 0, but my adjusted on-hand is 2. That would, if I saw a higher number in my adjusted on-hand, that would indicate that that was an item that was due to come in. I don't have it today, but it will come in. If this number is lower, then that means that that item is on a sales order. So I'm actually negative right now. I don't have any on hand, and I don't have the one I need for the sales order. That puts me into the negative. So if that was the case, I would see a difference in these quantity ordered numbers over here. Now you'll notice over here along the left-hand side, there's a green button next to each one of these. So like this item down here is my special order item, my generic row. I don't need to have it order any of this. So I'm going to unmark this item. I don't want it put on a PO. You'll notice my green light goes to a red light. Okay? That item will not be part of my auto PO. Now, I do want to point out we do have 2 different vendors here, so we should get 2 different POs. Once you and the computer agree on what you want to order, you're going to click the next button in the lower right-hand corner. Okay, and it's going to ask you if you want to write those changes back to Retail Pro, and you, of course, you do, so you're going to say yes. It's going to go through and figure out, and it tells me 2 PO documents were created. And it asks if I want to print them. Now, typically, I'm going to say no here, and the reason being is, remember, we set our associate up as auto, so I want to have the ability to make some changes to my PO before I print it. I may also want to add some additional items to it that maybe didn't meet their, weren't below their minimum, but I want to go ahead and reorder them anyway. So I'm going to say no to printing them. And if we back out of the Auto PO tool and go into regular purchase orders, you will see that I have 2 purchase orders that start off with my 2 little ampersands. Okay? If I had a long list of POs here, sorting by PO would put these up at the top of the list. You can also kind of tell which ones were generated by the computer because it has a really, really long number. And nobody would ever purposely put that number on there. So now I'm going to go into the form and take a look, and there's all the items that it told me it was going to order. I'm going to edit this and change the associate to admin. I may come in here and I may, add an item or 2. I can most certainly do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I can add new inventory in there just like I would a normal PO. This just did the bulk of it for me. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now I will print it and send it off to the vendor. I'm also going to come into this one, edit this one, change it from auto to admin, save it, and now I send this one off. That is the Auto PO tool. Any questions about that? Okay. Okay. Now there is also, back out one more level here, there are also auto transfers. So for those of you, Taylor, is your store, do you have multiple stores or is it just a single store? Okay. So the auto transfer wouldn't come into play for you, but what the auto transfer does do, since you're the only one on the phone with me today, we'll kind of tailor it to what you need. But the auto transfer, if you do ever add additional stores, the auto transfer basically does the same thing. Before it tells you to order items from your vendors, let's see if the other store has some that they can send us. You know, we don't want to spend more money than we have to. So the auto transfer, again, you're going to do the same type of thing that you did in the auto PO. You're going to fill out and set up these settings. So the store that I want, I'm going to put here. Now notice you have a source tab and a target tab. The source is where you're going to be pulling it from. The target is where you want it to show up. So actually I'm going to make 000 my source. Now the next thing that we see here is the distribution options. 99% of the time you're going to use available percent to distribute. What that's going to do is it's telling it to send us 100% of what they have available. It will not allow the source store to go below its minimum. So if they only have one more than their minimum, it will only send us that one. If they're below their minimum, it won't send us any. Okay? Now forced distribution, the only time that we generally use this is typically when a store is closing, a remote store is closing. We will force distribute 100% of their inventory, or in other words, we force everything to transfer up to the location that we're transferring it to. Then you can also do a specified quantity to distribute, and this is you putting in a flat number in here. You know, I want you to send me 2 of what you have. Okay? So not very common that you would use the last one, and this one, there's only a few occasions that that comes up. Now, what do I want it to generate? I want it to generate a transfer slip. That's my document that actually moves quantities between locations, but I want to have a chance to take a look at it first. So I'm actually going to check the held slips as well. So it will make the document for me. I just want it to hold it so I can double check it before it actually gets updated. Again, we're going to put in Auto as our associate. We can include in our analysis sales orders or transfer orders. Now I'm going to look at my target store, where I want it to end up. This is the store I want it to go to. Okay. I'm going to uncheck that, and I want to send to a custom level here. Okay. And again, I can have it take into consideration purchase orders, sales orders, or transfer orders. We have an Elements tab that we can put everything on our filter, and a Criteria tab that gives us the ability to filter. Once I save that, I can run it. I don't foresee that we're going to get anything, but who knows? Well, there you go. So what we're going to do, you'll notice, so we did our auto PO. Here is our on-hand. Our min is 1. Our max is 5. Our adjusted on-hand is the same as our on-hand. So this is the quantity that it shows that we were going to order. But our source store has 10 of those on hand. So instead of ordering them from the vendor, we're going to get them from the other store and not have to spend more money. So obviously, you would want to run your auto transfer tool before you run your auto PO tool, because no sense creating purchase orders if you can transfer it from another store. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take the special order item off and go click on next, write these changes back. Okay, so it made one transfer document, because transfer documents are not determined by the vendor. And I'm not going to print it because I want to take a look at it. So I'm going to back out of the auto transfer and go into my slips and into my held slips, because remember, that's the way I set it up. There's the one that I just created, so I'm going to unhold it, and I'll now see all of the items that are going to be transferred from store 000 to store 1. And that was all done with the auto utility. I'm going to change this to admin so I know that it's good, and then I will update only. Now, because I just did that transfer, if I back out and I go look at my inventory for those items, I will now see they have all received in a quantity of 3. So if I were to run my auto PO tool again, none of these items would come up as needing to be ordered because they are halfway between my minimum and my maximum. Okay? So any questions about any of that? Okay, let me go ahead and back out of here. Those are all of the auto utilities that we have available in version 8. Like I had mentioned, this webinar will be up on YouTube within the next week or so. So feel free to go up there and, re-watch the video if you think it'll help. Anything like that. If you feel like you want to do a little one-on-one with one of the trainers, just call our 800 number and ask for our service department. They will be happy to get you an appointment with a trainer, and we can deal with your specific needs with your data rather than using my very rarely used data. But I want to thank you for showing up, and feel free to join me for any webinar that is coming up. I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar now, and again, thank you for joining.